Welcome everyone to another episode of CDI Live. My name is Felix Vargas. I am the CTO of Security for CDI. Welcome in today on this Thanksgiving edition of CDI Live, and I am very happy to welcome Mr. Russell Pope to the show. Good morning, good afternoon. Where are you these days, Russell?
I'm in beautiful sunny Sacramento, California, where it is 60 degrees and clear skies. So yeah, my name is Russell Pope. I look after our developer experience, which includes everything from secure software supply chain to DevOps transformation, cloud, and all things sort of platform engineering. I'm here with Felix, who I think has just dropped away into the ether, so hopefully he'll be back in a second to talk a little bit about application security.
I'm back, and I apologize. I had some technical difficulties. The minute I was doing the intro, everything, it looked like you went away, and I was talking by myself. So I was actually, introing and going into the topic of conversation without you in it. So I do apologize, but I kind of want to take just a brief step back and just say that, this CDI Live, shows that we're releasing are, the goal of these shows is to have an emphasis and to focus on various topics of conversation that we're all having in the cybersecurity landscape and bringing different expertise from the CDI side of the house to sort of delve into these topics. We had a couple discussions already on, the SEC rule changes to how publicly traded organizations should respond to security incidents and how they should report them. Our previous one was with Mark Finlayson as well on cyber insurance. And today, like I was stating at the opening, I am joined by my esteemed colleague and friend, Russell Pope, who is the CTO of Modern Applications for CDI. I am the CTO for Application Security, and we're going to really get into all aspects of how to secure applications, right? Which is something we talk a lot about. And a couple of things that you mentioned, right? Static application security testing, dynamic application security testing are key to those elements. And you talked about SQL injection as well. So we have, and I just actually pulled up this article this morning where AutoZone, and I'm looking to the left because the article's right here. The AutoZone warns almost 185,000 folks were affected by the movement vulnerability, which was a SQL injection, right? And so, you and I, Russell, talk all the time about vulnerability management, right? I think that is one of the topics in every briefing that we have is how do we uncover vulnerabilities, whether we're doing scans, whether it's agent-based, and how do we remediate them? And you and I always have the conversation around, well, how can we prevent the vulnerability from even coming up, right? Or it being a vulnerability, and how sort of automate that process. So if you could talk a little bit more about application security testing and dynamic application security testing within that context, that would be great.
Yeah. And so, as I was saying before, getting into like SAST as an example, right? So this is an example of a tool we could use to get ahead of a SQL injection attack. Now you talk about like how can we sort of break and massage the application to figure out where the other vulnerabilities are. So a lot of the vulnerability scanners out there are really focused on things like looking for like a web server, like an Apache vulnerability, or like a SQL Server vulnerability specifically, right? They're not necessarily, they're not drilling into the applications. And so now this is where we would say like DAST, or dynamic application security testing, is something we can bring to bear as a part of the process to sort of drill into the application itself. And what I mean by that is like we might send like bad data into a form and see what happens. We might actually attempt to do a SQL injection. We might try hitting every URI that's in a particular web application to find out like, hey, did somebody leave like an admin panel unlocked and available to the world? Which happens in applications. Developers put their backdoors in applications so they can drill in and access data and tables and things like that, so they can do their own testing and validation. And usually they prune these things out before they go to production, but sometimes they don't. And so these are all different things that are like sort of inherent to the applications you're developing that like traditional vulnerability scanning tools aren't going to pick up. And that's where DAST, or dynamic application security testing, would come into play. The last component I want to talk about is like software component analysis, right? SCA. And this is really where we're looking at, developers generally don't have time to reinvent the wheel. And so if somebody has a feature or a function that they want to use, they're going to go use a library. Sometimes these libraries are open source, sometimes they're paid for libraries, et cetera. And the challenge is those libraries are maintained upstream, and any sort of vulnerabilities and challenges and things like that with that library that are inherent to that library, you introduce into your code when you import that library, right? And so what SCA allows us to do is keep track of all those libraries and the CVEs and other aspects of those libraries, so we understand those vulnerabilities. So when you import them, we can report on those. So you could either take compensating action. Hey, you know what? This thing has like there's a SQL injection in this particular library, or like as an example. And so you need to update to the latest version. Okay, I can take action now. Now the developer is informed versus waiting for the application to get all the way down to production. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, now there's a problem here. You got to go back to the drawing board, right? The other thing, and this is becoming more and more important, is license compliance. So there's different open source licenses out there with different levels of restriction. And some enterprises may have concerns around, for example, bringing in like GPL code versus like BSD or Apache license code, because they have concerns about like whether or not they have to release all their code and things like that. And so we can use SCA to build that software bill of materials and audit and report on the open source licensing as well. So those are the three big tools that we're doing or using in the world of application security.
Yeah. So across, the conversations that you're having, right? How prevalent are these three tools within organizations that are building custom applications? Is one more, we see more than another, or, is this a maturity thing where we're doing basic elements of it and sort of working up to more mature practice?
It's kind of a maturity thing, right? So if I go look at a slice of our customers, a lot of them are using tools like Sneak and SonarQube and things like that. Some are using GitLab, and they're primarily focused on like the SAST piece today. Not a lot of people are doing SCA right now, but they should be. And not a lot of people are ready to do the DAST piece yet, but we're going to get them there.
Right. Now that makes sense, right? And so as part of this, I mean, one of the things that's happening, right, and in cybersecurity as a whole, we obviously have a talent gap, right? We have 650,000 unfilled cybersecurity positions. We're sort of dealing with that in various ways. One is sort of mitigating risk, outsourcing to third parties. We're seeing organizations to some degree vendors trying to develop AI to help augment, right, the job of a security analyst, for example, right? So there's a lot happening as it relates to that, and part of the culture, there needs to be a shift from vendors, right, the developing and shipping products that aren't secure to having more of a focus on securing these products before they get shipped. Because there are two sides to this. One is I am an organization that develops custom applications, and the other side is I am a vendor that is supplying, a product or a platform to a customer, right? And so CISA is paying close attention to this, right? And they have released their Secure by Design, architecture, where they're really helping customers understand what that means, and also use that as a way to gauge the maturity of the vendor products that they're consuming to make sure that they're secure, right? So lots happening there. I think we talked about Move It. That's an example of that, right? Where you're sort of mitigating the risk. You're trusting that a third-party vendor is actually, going through software development lifecycle and making sure that they have secure code analysis, SAST, DAST, SCA as part of their practice. And CISA sort of guiding us through that process. So what would you say CISA's role has been so far, and what has that adoption been from a vendor perspective, across CISA Secure by Design guidelines?
Yeah, the Secure by Design guidelines, they're a pretty recent thing, right? I think it's going to take some time for a lot of those software companies and hardware manufacturers and things like that to sort of take them to heart, because we're talking about like three key things that they're talking about, right? Like taking ownership of the customer security outcomes, right? And so products are starting to ship now with encryption turned on by default. Security isn't becoming like an add-in license, which is good. SSO, I can't think of any products we sell off the top of my head, for example, that don't have like SSO baked into it, right? But I think things like the secure SDLC, that whole secure software supply chain where we have like the SaaS and the DAST and the SCA and things like that, I think that's something that they're going to have to refine and mature on. They probably have some form of vulnerability management program in there. Some of them are doing zero trust in their environments, but not all of them are today, right? And that's something where they may need some help to kind of mature there. I think on the transparency and accountability piece, we've kind of been there for a while, for the most part, with a lot of the big vendors out there, right? Every time like somebody reports a 0 day, usually like a security analyst firm will find one, they'll report it to Microsoft, and Microsoft will fix it. And like whatever the window is. I think it's like 30 days or something like that. And then the patch and the CVE come out kind of at the same time, right? And a lot of these OEMs are sort of owning that, which is good. But I think they could do better, right? Like, here's how we're making our software development lifecycle more secure. Here's how we're like handling vulnerability reporting. Here's the executive in my organization that like is going to be held accountable should we have a breach or an issue, right? So that's an example of something where, again, organizations can kind of mature to, and they know the leadership just needs to like take and drive that through the culture and the operations and everything they do from the top down, right? Like, maybe we should start incorporating some key security metrics into their quarterly reporting, as an example. How they report it to the board. How are they incentivizing their teams, as an example? Are they bringing in their customers and doing like sort of an advisory council to sort of figure out where the issues are, could be, get ahead of them, things like that. And I kind of think it's going to be more and more and more important for people to do this, because like our lives are in technology. And even if you're not on like any social media platform whatsoever, your life is on your cell phone, right? Like your bank, your credit cards, your travel, like your emails, like everything. And so we want to make sure that our apps and our devices are secure. And these guidelines are going to kind of help us get there. And I think that we will start to see regulations around this to start making people take this more seriously as we go forward.
That makes sense. And so shifting back to custom applications, right? Not necessarily the vendor application. So from a tooling perspective, I do see, I think the average number of tools that we have from cybersecurity is around 76, which is a staggering number. And how we define security tools is very different now. I think every tool is a security tool at this point. So that number just keeps growing just as we shift the definition. What are you seeing, at scale, right? If you look at large organizations that have very different teams, that have many custom applications, is there a level of lack of standardization across the various teams? And could we benefit from some level of standardization at the tool level as it relates to DAST, SAST, as well as SEA?
Yeah, I see in organizations that are using like SAST pretty wide in them, you'll often see the different products or projects within that organization have like a different tool chain. And it's not like by intent, it's just that, hey, I want to start doing this in my product. And so I'm going to go find some tools to do it. And then another division in the same organization might have the same idea. And so these guys might adopt Sneak and these guys might adopt SonarQube, right, as an example. Right. And they want to consolidate, because the challenge, and it's the same thing with like, why do I have 19 different security tools that all do the same thing, right? They all like, it creates confusion and it's operationally like difficult. And so I think it would behoove customers to sort of normalize what they're doing across that. And the same thing with like pipeline sprawl, tool sprawl, all this type of stuff, so that they're all able to like look at that same sheet of music and really figure out like a good go forward path.
Right. And there's a tie in there also to security operations as well, right? The more tools you have, the more integrations into Jira or ServiceNow, whatever you're using from an ITSM platform. And I think the lead developer tool currently, for that is probably Jira in a lot of, the customer conversations that I'm in, right? So the more tools you have, the more sort of complexity you have at disseminating work, and also prioritizing these vulnerabilities as they're coming in, right? Because context is everything. I say that all the time, right? If you don't understand the context of that vulnerability against your environment, is it a tier 1 application, tier 2, tier 3? It sort of guides your response process, right? Yeah. So definitely a challenge. Great. So yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, like you mentioned Jira, right? And one of the good reasons to like sort of bring down those tools is when we do those integrations. So we may want to create like a Jira issue every time we get like a DAST flag. Right? Like, hey, we found a vulnerability here. We need to create a Jira ticket automatically so that it could be thrown into a priority queue to be addressed as a part of the code. Because that's one of those things where it's like, hey, we've written the code, we've gotten to this point, and this is a problem we found. So now we got to kind of go back again before we ship the code.
Right. And that's normally where we're seeing, like I mentioned earlier, some level of standardization, right? Within the platform that is managing the work, so to speak, right? And Jira sort of taking the lead. So doing more with Jira, to help guide the process. And again, we have a skills gap. We need to sort of orchestrate and automate, our way out of that problem. And that's an example of how we would do that. So let's talk a bit about where customers should get started, right? So we've talked about a lot, and if you're listening today, you're probably wondering, well, I probably need help to some degree, or I don't know what I don't know, right? So what is the guidance as far as getting started and understanding where you are today, where you want to go, and what's that roadmap to sort of get you to that place that you want to get to?
Yeah. So we've aligned behind the Open Worldwide Application Security Project. And basically, that's an open group that provides like all kinds of guidelines and documentation and tools and techniques and things like that to help you sort of orient yourself and create a path forward for like application security, right? And we have a software assurance maturity model that we can come to you and sort of go through all the different areas of how you're delivering software, from how you're governing it, which is going to be like your strategy and your compliance and your policy, and how you're educating your teams. Training is a huge part of this. The design decisions you're making, how you're like, assessing the potential threats, collecting security requirements, the sort of overall architecture of your applications. Like we go through your implementation process. How do we build, deploy? How do we manage software defects? Things like that. Your verification process, how we're validating the architecture, how we're testing security, how we're testing functional requirements. And then from an operations perspective, how we're dealing with like incidents and the environments and the operational aspects of things. So with this OWASP SAM that we do, we kind of look at your organization in all these different areas and sort of figure out where the gaps are and build a roadmap for you to go forward, right? So some of our customers, as you mentioned before, it's a maturity thing, right? They may be doing some SAST today, but they may be doing it for one particular project, or maybe they're doing SCA, but they're not doing SAST, and they want to get to SAST, or maybe they're doing both, and they're trying to figure out how they address things like false positives or things like that, or do something meaningful with the data. And so that's where we can come in and kind of help with tool integrations and implementations and things like that to get the customer started.
And,
And
and is that normally what you see, right? Where most organizations, if you sort of ask 100 application organizations that are building custom applications, is SCA the low hanging fruit here?
it is because, like, it's a non-disruptive sort of integration, right? Because all it's going to do is report and flag
Hmm.
and let you know. And I think, and that's something that not only can the developers get value out of, but like security operators can get value out of as well, because they can go through and collect all that data and then look at their controls and compliance and things like that and make recommendations back or approve an outlier or whatever it is.
Right. And then if SCA is a low hanging fruit, would you sort of graduate maybe to SAST, static
Yeah,
application security testing? Okay. And
yeah, I
then
would say
eventually DAST.
yeah, I would start with like SCA, and then we'd start doing like some SaaS at that point, getting that incorporated into the pipeline, and then once we've kind of get that ball rolling, now we can start looking at doing like DAST and some more sophisticated security stuff. Some other things that are part of this that when we think about like a secure software supply chain, aren't just these components, but you also need to start thinking about things like secrets management. So we want to make sure we're not embedding passwords and keys and things like that into our code or committing them into source control. There's been a number of like AWS access keys, for example, that have been committed into public GitHub repos that have created a lot of agitation for a lot of large organizations out there. And so we want to kind of prevent those types of things. Image signing and secure image storage, so that operations can then take this known
Right.
good signed image and confidently deploy it into production, knowing that the developer's intent has been kept and it hasn't been tampered
Right.
with.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So great conversation. So a couple of things. How can CDI help?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, we have our OWASP SAM assessment, which is something that we do for a lot of our customers, again, to sort of orient ourselves where you are in the whole world of application security maturity. We have some tool integrations we can work with you on. We've done Sneak for a lot of customers. We've done Sonar. We've done some GitLab. And we've done like pipeline work with like Azure DevOps and Jenkins and GitHub and all that stuff. So we can help there, getting all that stuff integrated. We help with the DevSecOps transformation, and that includes everything from like all the tool integrations to sort of how we might change how you do like your operations day to day and how you ship code and things like that. And we have like an offering we call Next Gen for DevOps, for example, where we're basically going to embed with your organization and work as a member of your team and give you that prescriptive guidance going forward on how to sort of get these things incorporated, new features, new functionality, et cetera. So we can help address sort of the process and the cultural change as well. And the last thing I'll touch on is we do red teaming and penetration testing type of work for our customers as well. So once we sort of get things going, we could actually like turn that engine on and point it to your organization and see how well we've done or how well you've been doing on your own.
That sounds great. So we have a red team advisory security arm, if you will, right, where we can do every assessment under the book. And if we can't do it, let us know if you need it, and we can sort of develop that capability. So we do have a pre-sales organization as well. So if you, as part of those assessments, whether it be OSAM or whatever sort of gap assessment you have, if you need sort of recommendations around SAST, DAST, SEA, reach out to us, right? So we do have a making sense of type of workshop where we can make sense of the tools that are in the ecosystem as it relates to your requirement with the outcome of decreasing that vendor selection time. And as Russell stated, we have professional services, modern service delivery methodologies, as well as managed services, right? Which NextGen is an example of. So with that, I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much, Russell, for coming in all the way from Sacramento. I love the three-piece suit. Hopefully you have. So I don't know if you cover this, but most meetings that I've been, I've actually never seen Russell not wear a three-piece suit, to be honest. And I've seen him more than 100 times, and every time I see him, he is dressed to impress, even the day after the meeting, right? So if we go and we travel somewhere and there's a meeting, Russell, I've seen him in the morning in the elevator with a three-piece suit, which is impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm normally wearing a hoodie and sweatpants.
It feels like I'm wearing pajamas, when it fits, it feels very comfortable. So,
right. So,
bringing it back.
Great stuff. So, listen, thank you for joining, everyone. If you haven't already, please follow CDI on LinkedIn so you can get updates on new events that we're doing. Not only CDI live events, but any sort of events that we're having in an area near you. We're planning on having a few more of these sessions. We're trying to get them out bi-weekly so we can have candid conversations around these topics. So if there is a topic you're interested in, please, let us know. We're happy to sort of prioritize and move those up in the schedule. We did have a request for zero trust, so we're looking to schedule that in the near term. And I hope everyone enjoyed it. Sorry for the technical hiccups that we had at the beginning, but I think we got through that content and we handled the technical aspects of this fairly well. I don't know if there are questions out there. I'm checking to see if there are any questions that came in. If there are, let me know, Spencer. Okay, so no questions came in. So thanks everyone for your time. Drive safely tonight. If you're traveling, I think this is the worst day out of all the days in the year for traveling, with everyone getting on the road. So be safe, be happy, enjoy, and looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.